There you go. You are live. Perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of Products. Our topic for today is how AI is actually revolutionizing or reinventing cybersecurity. And uh, to help us with that, we actually have Paul Griswold. Paul is the former CPO for cybersecurity at Honeywell. In his role, Paul was responsible for overall strategy of cybersecurity software, managing services, and consulting services. Paul has had a variety of product leader positions at Internet Security Systems, IBM, my old company, and Air2Web. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I help product teams leverage AI so they can be more productive and effective. Paul, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Hey, thanks, Masad. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this with you
I've
today.
been looking forward to our conversation. I know we talked a few weeks ago, and I love the perspective that you actually have on how AI is changing the cybersecurity game. And it's such an important topic, just given where we are in the world that we live. Cybersecurity is getting more and more attention, and the fact that AI can do a whole bunch of things is going to be fantastic. Um, Let me start from from the top, right? So just high level perspective. Where do you think is the overall impact of AI when it comes to cybersecurity?
It's really impacting anything that has to do with cybersecurity, cyber is interesting because you have of course, the users and the vendors, but then you also have the whole aspect of the attackers as well.
Yes.
And AI is definitely being used by attackers to help automate the attack chain. We've seen examples where AI is being used to do research on targets that these guys want to attack.
Mm.
AI can craft a very nice phishing email these days. The old phishing emails that had typos and things like that, those are pretty much things of the past. And then, of course, you have things like deep fakes as well, where they're being used to really create very convincing messaging
Right.
to try to get people to click on links they shouldn't, that install ransomware or do other types of things like that. There's actually been also examples of threat actors using ChatGPT to create malware. OpenAI actually has a pretty interesting report on this, where they go through and they have obviously a security arm, and they document things that they have seen OpenAI and ChatGPT technology being used that are kind of malicious. And there's also some, from an attacker perspective, there's also some more advanced use cases. Some of them are kind of theoretical at this point, but there certainly have been demonstrations of things like model poisoning, where
Wow.
you inject malicious data into a model to get it to spit things out that it probably shouldn't. One example I saw was somebody asked one of the chat bots for a phone number for a Microsoft partner support, and the number they got was a malicious phone number designed to
Oh,
suck somebody in. So you see stuff like that, so you've got that aspect of it from a vendor perspective. The people who are selling cybersecurity products, pretty much everyone's on the AI train right now.
yes.
Every message you see from most vendors has AI in the first couple of words, if not the very first word,
Yeah.
with AI powered. And the truth is that many of the vendors have been using AI for a number of years. And I remember when I was at one of my former companies, they were making a big AI push, and they said, we need more AI stories to tell. And we actually did a survey of our portfolio. We found dozens of examples of where
Yeah.
AI, mainly machine learning, but AI type of things were being used for a number of years. So I think that's really where the vendors are getting the most right, where AI is in there and it's helping solve the problem, but you almost don't even know that it's there. It's just
Yes.
almost
It's
transparent.
kind of right, always working in the background. I
Exactly.
I like the fact that you start off from the threat perspective because you're probably right. The adoption of especially generative AI is probably higher from malicious actors,
Hmm.
right? To do things and to test the system in ways that has never been tested, right?
Yeah.
And that puts vendors like yourself at a not I wouldn't say at a back foot, but you definitely have to react much faster, right?
There's definitely an imbalance between the defenders and the attackers, because you think about a company who wants to use AI for cybersecurity or anything else. There's a lot of concerns you have there. You want to have proper AI governance. You want to make sure you're not
Yeah.
putting data into a public model that could be used maliciously, and all the things you have to take precautions for. The attackers don't care about any of that. They don't
No.
have lawyers telling them they can't do this or
No.
can't do that. If they have an idea, they just run with it. So
Yes.
cybersecurity has always kind of been very asymmetric in terms of the attackers having some advantage, and this is just an extension of that, where
Yeah.
they're able to use run wild with AI, where the defenders are having to follow some rules at least in a lot of
Yeah.
cases.
And I'm sure with AI now, they can even attack with a much higher velocity because creation becomes so much easier, right? Like
Yeah,
the example you gave me and gave us in which you can use ChatGPT to code whatever malicious software you want or
yeah,
virus you want, and
exactly.
then
And
you can do that, right?
yeah, and ChatGPT can be used, or any of the AI things can be used to make malware harder to detect, make it more
Yes.
polymorphic, so it's not so static, and you can spot it right away. So there's things like that, and just the work of a malware campaign. That's typically not just like a 1 or 2 day thing. It's typically the attackers are typically in there for up to a year. Establishing a foothold and moving laterally and all these other things. In the past, all that was manual work. Now that can be assisted by AI, which
Yeah.
one could make it go faster, but two allow an attacker to attack more places.
Yeah. Yeah. It just gives them scale, unfortunately, right?
Exactly.
By the way, I've seen quite a few people join, so if you have any questions for Paul, please put it in the chat, and we'll address them as we're talking. Um, Paul, let me, if it's okay with you, let's go deeper, right?
Mhm.
Can you share with us potential use cases, either you've seen in the past or things that you actually see coming in the near future, about how AI can actually have an outsized benefit
Sure.
um, to the way we traditionally do cybersecurity?
Sure. So, I mean, I will say one of the things that makes AI so great with cybersecurity is just the amount of sheer data that cybersecurity products
Mm,
produce. And if you look at pretty much any modern cyber solution, we've gone through this period where it's something DR, like DR means detection and response, and there's
yeah. Okay.
half a dozen DR. There's XDR, and there's
Yeah.
EDR, and there's NDR, and there's MDR, and DDR, like all these different things. And, basically at the core, all these different things pull data in, do some sort of analytics on top of it for a
Right.
particular purpose, and help you defend against attacks or detect attacks and things like that. So when you look at how AI can enhance those types of things, a lot of it, starts at the point where you already got a lot of data coming in. It's just a question of how you make sense of it. So when you look at some of the use cases, pattern identification is a really big one.
Perfect. Yes.
So
And
being able
easier
to
for
do
AI to do it. It's one of
yeah,
the
exactly.
capabilities. Yeah.
Analyze behavior, detect anomalous behavior, both from systems as well as users, to
Mm,
see if there's something that's going on that doesn't make sense. They haven't seen that type of pattern in the past. Lateral movement, so you see some malware moving around in your environment. AI is something that will greatly help accelerate all of those.
yeah.
The other thing AI helps a lot is just that tier one analysis of data coming in that's normally done by a person in a security operations center or a SOC. And level one analyst work is easy to get burnt out on, just because you have so much data coming in, and it's
Yeah.
just kind of you can get really numb to the job pretty quickly. And AI is something that's helping a lot there, where it's kind of taking some of that more boring work and allowing people to move from say a
Interesting.
level one to a level two role more
Yeah.
quickly.
Does that mean that it's easier? So the AI is doing most of the level one work, or do you foresee AI doing most of level one work so that humans can do more of the level two? Or is right now just AI assisting the level one work?
A lot of it is assisting, and I'll tell you one of the big reasons for that is because companies that are investing a lot in cybersecurity, they're not starting from scratch. I mean, they've
Right.
been at things for a long time. So they've got,
Yeah.
millions and millions and millions of dollars invested in different products from
Right.
different companies. Their network products may be one thing, their endpoint products may be another, their data protection may be another. So every environment kind of looks a little bit different. And there's no solution that I've seen that you can just kind of drop in and say, all right, in a week, I'm going to be able to be a tier one analyst for all these different products that
Yeah.
that are in the environment. So right now, I think it's probably kind of more on the assisting and the workflow automation part, but just given the huge skills gap that we have in cybersecurity, where it's really hard to find people to do these roles anyway, and then it's even harder to keep them once you got them.
Yeah.
I think it's making those jobs more interesting, and in some cases is more
Interesting.
challenging.
I do like that perspective. Because you're absolutely right. Even I mean, even forget about cybersecurity, but just look at the impact of AI on the general workforce, right? It's
Mhm.
not there. I have never seen any data yet in which it's actually replacing people, but it's actually
Yeah.
augmenting, right? And
No,
that
definitely,
augmentation
definitely.
is very important. And I think the human AI loop or synergy is where you can get the biggest bang for your buck. Um,
Yeah, and I'll give kind of a product management example of that. I mean, we had one of the companies I used to work for recently. They had, we have like many big companies. IBM was like this. You remember spring plan and fall plan at
yeah,
IBM. A lot of those bigger companies have these planning sessions. And as an experiment, we said let's see what ChatGPT would say about our 3 year strategy. And it came back with some stuff.
pretty
It,
good.
it
Yeah,
wasn't all bad, but it did not have the story tied around it. So it
yeah,
was a good example of where AI is a good tool to generate ideas and help out and
yes,
even do some research and things like that. But it still needed that human piece to put the
yeah,
story around it and really make it
yeah.
consumable.
Well, now you're talking about my language because AI
Yeah,
and product management. I love
yeah,
that. We can
yeah.
go deeper into that, but this is about you and not about me. Um, let me if you don't mind, let's put on a future hat of, and I asked you the question about where you see AI right now, but if you had to kind of take a look at the crystal ball, right, and you can see where do you think AI is going in the next 5 years? Like, where do you see are the untapped potential opportunities, right?
Sure, sure.
Things
So
that people, things that are out in the future that are still just, they're just out there, but people haven't thought about it or are still kind of working towards
I'd say that particularly in cyber, there are a lot of places where AI is going to help, and simulations and training is probably one of the big ones where as a cybersecurity defender, you're constantly checking to make sure that your plans are in place and you're trying the plans out with these things called tabletop exercises,
it.
and
Right,
some of the more advanced companies are going to cyber ranges and doing simulations and things like that. AI is going to have a huge impact on making those simulations and those
right,
tests more dynamic and just more realistic. Another area I think is going to be big, and this is kind of a boring but very large problem, is compliance management.
really,
If
yes,
and I know with the companies I've worked at, we do business in dozens, if not hundreds, of countries. Many of them have different compliance regulations that we have to comply to be able to continue to do business there.
right,
And the default response for a lot of companies is just to bring in PwC or someone like that to throw money at the consultants to solve the problem. I
yeah.
think I think especially with LLMs and just how advanced they've gotten in the past several years, that's a great opportunity to be able to throw compliance documents at a machine and have it spit out, automated controls on how to determine, how you're compliant. So I think that's a big one.
But that's huge, right? Because that is
Yeah,
a huge cost to organizations, right? And
exactly,
you need compliance because, frankly speaking, that's how you're going to get through audit.
exactly. And that's,
um,
there's
and
the old the
that's
old
big.
saying in cyber is you probably aren't going to get fired if you get hacked. You're going to get fired if you fail a bunch of audits. So, so
Yeah,
that direct
I like
plunge.
that perspective.
Yeah.
Anything else you see? I love both the two use cases. Anything else that you
Yeah, I
see
mean, just a
even
couple
further
more I'll
out in the
throw out.
future?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the invention of AI and how AI is being used by adversaries brings up things like deepfake detection. That's
Mm,
going to be another area. Similar to how we do fraud detection today. There's companies out there that will do phone based fraud detection and things like that. I think deepfake protection is going to be a category of capabilities. And then there's the whole governance of AI. So, you remember back when
yeah.
cloud started, there was shadow IT, and it's like, I
Yes.
know my employees are using cloud-based services. I don't know what they are. I got to figure that out. Same thing with AI. People are using Chat GPT. They're using these other solutions, and the question kind of becomes what proprietary corporate data is being fed
Yes,
into the
what are they putting in?
right
And you have
protect.
to, and shadow AI is a huge problem, right?
Yeah,
I have a existing client right now in which for them security is a big deal, and for them they're really worried about shadow AI
yeah,
because
yeah,
they have to put the guardrails in for their organization and their client and their employees and product managers in particular
yeah,
to figure out what to put in and what not to put in. Because you put your product roadmap in,
yeah. It's like, all right, it's
you're in
there.
trouble. Yeah, there goes the secret
Yeah.
sauce. Um,
Yeah, and then the one last thing I'll mention in this category, and I most recently worked for Honeywell, which was focused on OT cybersecurity. OT is still in a lot of ways hesitant to put things in the cloud,
Yeah.
just regular cybersecurity data, let alone AI type of use cases. So I think there's a whole category of managing hybrid AI solutions, not just for cyber, but for anything where you don't want to have your data mixed in with anyone else's data. I think that's a kind of a management category that's going to come about here, and we'll see more of that in the next couple of years too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good one too. Actually, I didn't think about that one, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
um,
the thought on
let
cloud is
me,
just the AI.
yeah, but I agree with you. I mean, even when I was at IBM, and actually, frankly, when I was at Google Cloud, getting cybersecurity firms to actually trust public and private cloud was always hard. And
Yeah,
so yeah, I can see the ramifications about using AI too. How do you get
right.
around it? Do you just have private large language models? Is that the right? Is that
You
where
can have
the
private
industry is
large
going?
language models. It's interesting because I think the people who figure out how to effectively anonymize data to the point that people trust, where you can still get value out of the anonymized data to get kind of that
Yeah,
network effect in use cases like threat intel. I think that's going to be something that is going to be game changing, because if you're not sharing your data, of course you have good reasons not to do that, but then
yeah,
you may be seeing things that three of your peers in the industry are also seeing. You'll just never know because you guys are so paranoid about sharing stuff. So
yeah, yeah. And the problem with having a private LLM is that you're fixed at that level of technology, and
yeah,
large
yeah.
language models are moving so fast, right?
Hmm.
Is by the time you figure out how to use, you know, 3.0 of LLM, you already are now. The industry's moved to 5.0.
Sure. Yeah,
And
in
so
6
you're
months.
always behind.
Yeah,
It's a tough market to be in,
right,
right? So
absolutely.
actually, that's a great segue. So kind of tell me, one of the things I actually enjoyed when we talked first is just your view on where the landscape is of where things are changing, right? Not just from the attacker defender perspective, but just like who are the key vendors who have, in your perspective, are doing something great or cool, or new ways of thinking about cybersecurity.
So it's actually an interesting landscape because from my perspective, it's really kind of a combination of some of the very well established folks, some of whom aren't necessarily known for cybersecurity. Your former employer, Google, is certainly on that list. Microsoft's another.
Well, they
I mean,
just bought one, so
yeah, they did. Yeah, with Wiz. Yeah, exactly. Those guys are busy counting their money. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of AI, but if you look at just, I remember when Google Chronicle, which I think's been renamed to Google Security Operations, came out.
yeah,
Kind of one of the biggest selling points of that is we can search a petabyte of data in a quarter second. I mean, that's
yeah,
just an
that's
amazing
ridiculous. Yeah.
stat. Only if you know what you're searching for. And I think AI helps a lot there because given the models and things like that, it can actually really take advantage of that horsepower. Microsoft's another one. I mean, I saw something back in February where Microsoft takes in 78 trillion pieces of telemetry every single day
Wow.
on cybersecurity. 78
78
trillion.
trillion.
Yeah. So I mean that's just an incredible amount of data. And you just think about the things they can do with models and have on the other end of this sped out threat intelligence and rules and
That's
things like
crazy.
that
Yeah.
block. And you look at that just from a consumer perspective. I think some of the best AI you don't even know you're using. You just know you have really effective threat protection rules
Yeah.
that someone like even like my mom who uses Microsoft Defender. I mean, it's she's getting the advantage of that with out knowing anything about the AI behind
No,
it. So,
no. I
so
will
I
tell you
think
from a user perspective, well, from a PC user perspective, the hardest part I used to have, and I think Microsoft's doing better and better at this, is that they used to say that you have a threat for X, Y, and Z virus, and it's always some kind of weird code
yeah,
that they use. And I think I know some companies are now using that to kind of decipher that code and put it in simple language, so people
yeah,
like me can
usability
understand,
aspect.
right? And that translation itself is of value,
Sure.
um,
Yeah,
right?
definitely so. I mean, I think I've been in cybersecurity a long time, and I know until recently usability was maybe not at the top of the list, but
Yes,
I feel like these days there's a lot better focus on it, and people are actually
yeah,
dedicating design teams, and that
yeah.
that of course
Well,
feeds.
it is a competitive advantage, right? If
Yeah,
everybody's having
definitely,
problems with it, and
definitely. Yeah,
it's easy to put things into things that people understand.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so we kind of talked about the big players in the landscape. I'm curious to see, do you see any startups emerging that are just doing things a bit differently, or they have the same, they're solving the same problem but in a different way?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at kind of some of the bigger ones like the CrowdStrikes and the Palo Alto and Sentinel One,
Yeah,
those are the ones who are, I think, going to end up acquiring some of these startups to fill gaps. I mean, all of those companies are, great companies that they're well known for their cybersecurity capability,
yeah,
and Google and Microsoft have tons of money, but at the same time, with the cyber focused players, there's no dispute on how much
yeah,
budget's going to cyber. All of it's going
yeah.
there. So
All
they
of it,
just
yeah.
they have
They do
a
have
little
that advantage of being single focused, right? And that
exactly.
actually helps.
Yeah, but
Right.
when it comes to startups, I mean, there's a couple that I'll particularly name. One is Troj AI.
Huh.
They're focused
Okay.
on the security of the AI models themselves. So they're
Interesting.
relatively early on. They're at the seed funding stage. I've got someone who used to work for me works over there, but done a little bit of research on them, and they seem to be kind of solving a new category where you're not going to be able to take your existing security tech and just move it over. It's actually kind of a new problem.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. What is it that they're doing differently, or what is it? What allow me? My knowledge of cybersecurity is layman at best.
Sure.
um, tell me what problem they're solving and how they're doing it differently than some of the bigger players.
It really has to do with the AA models themselves, analyzing the data that's going in, and then also analyzing queries against them to see if they're malicious. And it's similar to what you do in other areas of cybersecurity, but the content, what they're looking for, is AI specific, AI model
Got
specific.
it.
So
Got it.
yeah, so
Interesting.
they're doing some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Integer is another one. Integer has been around for a while, but they're all about automating that tier one SOC function that we had talked
Mm.
about. So they've got models specifically on workflow and automation. Get Real Labs is another one. They're deepfake detection. They're
Ah,
taking some
interesting.
research that was done by a professor, I believe, at Stanford, and they're all about detecting deepfakes in both audio and
Yeah.
video versus kind of some of the other things that come out. And then one other one I'll mention, and this goes back to the compliance use case that we talked about before. There's a company that recently came out of Y Combinator called Delve. They're really, kind of early on. I think they have 15 employees, but they are focused on that very boring but very, prevalent compliance problem.
Yeah.
How do we take all these different compliance regulations and build something out of them? There's actually a good map of cybersecurity companies, kind of a logo map from
Huh.
a VC firm here in Atlanta called Tech Operators. You can find it on
Okay.
LinkedIn, but they do a good job of tracking the different AI focused cyber companies. Some of
Interesting.
these guys are on there, some of them aren't, but they that's a really good place to look at to kind of
Yeah.
see what some of the different beat folks
Yeah.
are doing out there.
I think given the way we are in the state of industry, there are going to be disruptors coming up
Yeah,
in every nook and cranny, right? And they're all going to be attacking one small problem at a time, right? From a
yeah,
compliance perspective, a deepfake perspective, or securing LLMs perspective, they all have a piece. And I can definitely see your point of view that, you know what, they will eventually be gobbled up by either the major players or the pure play,
yeah.
right?
I think so. I think so.
So I'm curious, what is that? You've been running Honeywell cybersecurity for quite some time. So where are the opportunities? Is the opportunities if you're if you had to think about where Honeywell needs to be in the next 5 years, is it more about just M&A and gobbling up these things so you can build more capabilities, or where do you think the landscape is moving or shifting?
So I'll say this, and I since I've left Honeywell, but I
Yeah, you
think
don't need
the
to share trade
yeah,
secrets,
no,
but
no, but
just
I think the approach we would take there would be, pretty similar to what most larger companies would do is,
yeah,
you just kind of you look at the timing and you say, how big is the opportunity? How well are we equipped to address the opportunity? Meaning, do we have customers, not just logos, but people we sell to, people, not companies, but
right,
people we sell to that would buy this from us, and then how long would it take to build it? And
yeah,
I think when you look at some of the pure play cyber folks, comes kind of some of the bigger logos. I think that they definitely kind of fall into the category of they have the existing customers, so they're selling to the right person in the organization. But it would just even though they've got plenty of resources,
yeah,
they're not going to be able to build this thing in 6 months.
yeah,
So I think that's where a lot
exactly,
of the M&A is
yeah.
going to happen.
It's easy. It's always easier to buy,
Yeah, it
especially
is.
when you're a big player and integrate that capability, and then you already have a sales team
Yeah,
that's out
I,
there that can actually help you, recapitalize on your investment. So,
I'll say
um,
that the buying part's the easy part. The integration part's always where the
yes,
stickiness comes
I
in.
agree. I agree. Yeah, and especially
Yeah,
when you have integrating different product lines, and that's always
sure,
hard,
sure,
right?
and cultures and
Um,
all sorts of stuff that goes along with
yeah.
that.
If you don't mind, let's switch focus. You mentioned something earlier that it's always hard to find good cybersecurity people,
It is, yeah.
right? And I'm gonna go double down. I'm gonna take not just the fact that you said that, but I'm saying it's always hard to find good cybersecurity people. It's even harder to find good cybersecurity product people.
Right,
Um,
right.
uh, Tell me, if somebody's interested in getting a career in this, how do they go about doing it, right? I mean, I love the career arc that you've had,
Mhm.
going from different companies and focusing on cybersecurity and how that has helped you tremendously. I'm curious, um, any words of advice or wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, product management's interesting because, at least when I was in college, I won't say how many years ago, but years ago, and I think, I did my MBA even more recently. So, even then, product management is just not a career path that a lot of people recognize coming out of college, regardless if you have a technical degree or business degree or
Yeah,
what have you. And it's very rare that I've seen where people go straight into a full blown product management role out of
no.
college. It's always something where people kind of see the role, they're interested in the role, and they're looking for ways to kind of get in there.
I think
I
product
mean,
management is like a second career for most people.
exactly,
Nobody
exactly.
ever starts off as a PM.
Yeah,
Um, they
yeah,
start in sales, marketing, or customer support, and then they find out they like to build,
yeah,
and
exactly,
that's how they end up.
exactly.
Yeah,
And it is not for everyone. I mean, it is definitely a difficult role, and I think a lot of the reason why the role is difficult is because product management is different things at different companies and
yeah,
sometimes vastly different things. But the one common thread that I have seen is that product management is a catch all. And
yeah.
I'll give you an example. When GDPR came out, all of our products had to be compliant with GDPR. Not really an R&D thing, not really a sales thing, not really a marketing thing. We'll give it
No,
to product management. So I think, if someone looking to get into the role, I want to, one of the things stress is make sure that it's really something you want to get into. I mean, it's
it's
cool
a
to
lot
see.
of herding cats,
It
right?
is. It,
It
it
is herding
definitely is.
cats, and in many ways, it's a thankless job because everybody's yelling at you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you are the face of the product. So the
Yes.
way the way I got into it many years ago, and the way I advise people is to just have conversations with people who are in product management and really kind of understand what they do.
Yeah.
When I look to hire people, I mean the three things I look for are leadership, curiosity, and flexibility. Those are the
Mm.
same three things I've been looking for years, and those are three things I really try to push on myself. But
Yeah.
can this person lead without authority? Can they get people behind a shared vision? They have true curiosity and true empathy for user problems, and are they gonna
Yeah.
obsess over those problems until they're solved? And with the flexibility, I mean, you're going to wear a lot of different hats. It's going to be a very different, day to day experience, and
I agree.
it's something where you got to be self directed. You got to be able to work with limited structure, and just get whatever needs to be done
Yeah.
to get done. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I think number one, the path to PM is never a straight path because I think
yeah,
in fact, I only know of one university that actually has a product management program
really,
at an
okay,
MBA level.
yeah,
Um, and you're right. It just takes it takes a lot of what I call emotional intelligence
yeah,
um, to be a good PM, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, you have to have empathy for your customers and the problems. You have to know how to lead without authority, because in many ways it's more of an influence
Yep,
than actually a direct lead role, and so it's hard. It's
yeah.
never easy, right?
Definitely so.
Um,
And you probably agree with this statement as well. But I mean, one of the things I tell people too is that in terms of the skills you need to have, definitely the emotional intelligence is one of the
it's
probably the
key.
top. I would say a 1B is probably time management because
Yeah.
you're never going to have enough time to do everything you want to do. So you've got to
Yes.
be able to just ruthlessly prioritize your days and,
Yes.
and make sure you're doing the most important things first.
Well, that's hopefully is when I come in, is I help them figure out how they can use AI to actually help themselves.
Awesome. Yeah. Perfect segue.
uh, which actually brings us to our last question. Is I always like to ask my guests these questions. Is like, how are you using AI, just personally or professionally? Like, what is the one or two hacks that you want to
Yeah,
share with the
sure. So I
audience?
mean, I just the way I use it, I think it's probably similar to the way most people use it. I wouldn't say that I'm like a super advanced user. I mean, I use various different chatbots for things like research and to help refine
Perfect.
ideas. Helping with wording things. I tend to be a bit verbose at times, so I can put things into Chat
Yeah.
GPT, and it helps me things make it shorter. One of the most useful use cases, and this is kind of a silly thing, but it's just taking meeting notes.
Yeah.
Teams has that thing built in, and there are other third party ones you can use with other platforms where it just
Yeah.
they actually work really well. I
They
was
work really
surprised.
well. Right.
And the last thing I'll mention was just kind of the aha moment for me, at least with Gen AI, was with writing code. And I don't,
Uh,
any code I do today is really as kind of a civilian. I'm not doing it professionally anymore, and just kind of more of a, things with my home automation and things like that. But I remember the first time I asked ChatGPT to write a script for me that was, not super complex, but pretty
yeah.
complex. It wrote it just absolutely perfectly. I had to change two or three things, and that
It's
was it.
perfect.
Yeah. So, I generally use like Claude. I use Claude to kind of, work on artifacts and things like that. Perplexity is another one that I've just recently started
Yes.
using.
I
I
love
love that for
perplexity. Yeah.
research. Yeah. I mean, just, I really like how it cites the sources and things
Yeah.
like that. And then pretty much ChatGPT for everything else.
Yeah. Well, if you like coding, you should check out, or you may already have, is Cursor is a great one.
Okay.
Um,
I've heard of that one. I
and
haven't done much with it.
yeah, Cursor is great. I mean, I use, especially to do prototyping, I use a lot of Bolt. I like Bolt a lot. So
Hmm.
it's a great way to actually do very quick prototypes in a very short amount of time. Like
Awesome. I'll
Lovables
check
there,
that
or
one
they have V0, Cursor.
out. Okay.
There's a ton of tools. And by the way, all of these all of these tools are based on Claude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're using
Exactly.
Claude underneath, which is interesting because a year ago I would have never thought that Claude would actually be better at coding and programming, but who knows? Well,
Okay.
Claude is also cheaper, so that
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
helps.
I'll check that
um,
out. I'm guessing it's
that's good.
cursor.ai.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I can probably look it up for you, but yeah,
Okay. Cool.
it's what yeah, it's Cursor is definitely there for development, right?
Okay.
Um, and we've been doing a lot of experimentation to figure out how you can actually, in many ways, how you can actually take something in which you have a prototype and then actually embed it in live product as A/B testing,
Okay.
right? So you
Interesting.
might have an idea. You could say, okay, let me just kind of do a quick feature. I'm going to build it on. I'll build it on Lovable or Bold, and then I'll take it to Cursor, and I'll
Mm,
have Cursor then create true code that then I can embed into my product itself and just do A/B testing for a short amount of time,
okay.
right?
Great.
And then figure out how I can give it to development to then really develop the product and solution,
Yeah. You
right?
think about how we did this, even a year ago, 2 years ago. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's just so much better.
it's insane how
Yeah.
quickly you can now um, get to testing with users
Yeah.
with AI, right? It's just like the speed is phenomenal,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's where we're moving towards. We're moving towards all of these things in which you can literally validate an idea as quickly as possible, so you know what to build and what not to build.
Right.
Ultimately, that's what PMs do. They decide
Yeah.
what to build.
Exactly. Yep.
um, all right. With that being said, I think we're actually over time, and these
Okay.
things always happen. Every time I have an interesting guest, we always go over
I
time.
appreciate it.
But thank you very much, Paul. This has been fantastic. I love your perspective on the industry and how you're thinking about it, how they organize, or how the industry is thinking about it. Um, I mean, I've of course heard of the big players, but I had not heard about some of the small players. So now I'm gonna go check it out.
Yeah. Check out
I'm
that
gonna
Tech
take a look.
Operators Market Map. I'll send you a link. It's great, and it's got
Yeah.
a lot of
Actually,
really
you know
good.
what? You send me a link. I'll put it in the show notes so that people
Okay.
who are also are interested in it, then they can take a look at it too.
Perfect.
But thank you very much for being a guest. I'm glad we can do this. And you
Yeah.
know
Thanks
what?
for
We should actually do this a few years from now, so you can tell me. We can go back and say, you know what? I got this right, but I did not think about this, and this is where I got completely wrong.
Yeah. No, that'd
Because
be
that's
great.
how this thing is changing, or how
Yeah.
fast it's changing. But
Yep.
thank you, Paul.
All right. Thank you.